What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the arena with another episode with me, your host, Matt, my co host, MD, and a special guest. We have Marina Haddad. She is a content creator, entrepreneur focused on, and gut health coach, functional health coach, one of those two, and focused on health and personal growth. And also a fellow alumni member. Who played today, for in the Final Four. So, anyways, ILL. Marina, thank you so much for your time and for spending a little bit of time with us. Why don't we start off by who is Marina Haddad?
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's a good question to start with. I was born in Brazil, raised in Michigan, and as you know, went to U of I and worked in the corporate world, got my master's degree, did all of that, and then decided to quit my job 2 years ago and go traveling. And it was meant to be 2 months, turned out to be a year and a half. And in those ventures, just tried a lot of different things, learned about myself, and stumbled upon opening my own business. And so I became certified in functional health, became practitioner, and decided to do that. And so I help women with bloating mainly. And that's what I do now. I also do systems and automations for a fitness coach and am doing the content side of things as well, seeing how that develops and just taking it a day at a time.
So,
Question there, I just
go
quick
ahead.
minor stuff there, but you said it was meant to be 2.5 months, turned into a year and a half. What were like? Why was it ever meant to be 2.5 months? Like, what was your thought process? And then, I guess, give us a little bit more detail into how that did turn into. Not going to do math in public here, but something X the amount of time that.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. So I think I just was scared. Quitting my corporate job was not something that my parents supported, and family to me is very important. And so I didn't have a plan B. I thought, okay, I have saved this amount of money, so I know I can travel for 2 months. And the plan was to do that and kind of expand my mindset and then come back and figure something out. And when I was out there, I just realized, oh, I can make this work. I didn't know, how things would go. When I planned for the 2 months, it was meant to be just traveling and, like, enjoying myself, and I really connected with so many people and was just finding a different side to myself that honestly I didn't know I had. I didn't think I was such a seeker and could figure things out when there was, when push came to shove, and I actually met other fellow Brazilians in Thailand, and they connected me to some dive centers, and I have a background in biology, and so I was able to do some work out there, and so I was able to work, and that's how I was able to stay abroad, and then eventually I got a job online doing AI training, and I just really didn't want to come back because life there was just so good. There was no reason to, and I was, making money, and so I was able to stay out there. I did the whole thing of, like, falling in love with somebody, and so we decided to travel together, and that's really why my travels were much longer.
And so, you mentioned, your parents maybe not being supportive of, your decision to leave, and family also being, very important to you. I guess, how do you, because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. How do you marry those two things of like wanting to, make your parents proud, support them, things like that, with the fact that also they weren't supportive of something that I think you knew in your gut probably wanted to do. Like, how did you kind of navigate that?
So it was very difficult. I mean, I had been wanting to quit my corporate job for 4 years. So it wasn't a decision that was, made out of nowhere. There was a lot of thought into it. And I was very miserable. Like my mental health took a toll when I was working in corporate. I was a consultant working 60 plus hours a week and I had no work life balance. And so I was turning 26 at the time and I was like, whose life am I living? Like according to whose blueprint? And I realized if I continued down this path, this would be the rest of my life. And I thought, okay, if my parents don't support me now, that's okay. I know in the long run, what they truly care about is that I'm happy and healthy. And I had struggled with my mental health for many years on end in not, doing what was in alignment for me and just kind of doing what I was told to do. And so it really just, it was a leap of faith. I had never taken that like big of a leap of faith in my life. And it was uncomfortable. It did, affect my relationship with them. But with time, they came around and it came down to like, we want to make sure you're safe and you're healthy. And in that, I know that I'm very blessed that they did come around. And a lot of times, like they still say that this is a phase and they want me to go back to corporate. And it's just a very different lifestyle. But I do believe that deep down they see the woman that I became and am becoming, and that I have figured it out, and things are actually so much better in terms of my mental health and my physical health. And so being able to trust in myself and say, I know I've got me, and I know that when I pour all of this energy into me, that means my mental and my physical health and just overall life will get better. That means that they will come around. And so, even if they didn't, I was okay with that because I had not prioritized myself up until this point of life. And I knew if I kept going down that path, that I would not be okay. Like, I had some very dark thoughts. Like, there were times in my life that I no longer wanted to be here. I really struggled with like suicidal ideation, and it was very dark times in my life. And my parents knew that I struggled with my mental health. So I was like, this is my chance to do something for me. And it was the scariest thing I've ever done because not having my family there really made me feel that I had no one. And I thought, well, I'd rather have myself than abandon myself and please other people. So that's really what got me to go, and we've had some really tough conversations, in terms of, like, security, like, job security and finances in the future. We definitely don't see eye to eye, and that's just something I've had to accept, and it's taken time because at first I used to be really hurt that they didn't understand me, or so I thought I felt misunderstood, but it's like, now I understand me, which is what I didn't have for 26 years.
And so, I feel like you've had a number of different your life kind of strikes me as, and again, this is just, I feel like a little bit of a roller coaster, and
Yeah.
maybe better said, non-linear. And so I guess, and you just mentioned, having suicidal ideation. Out of all of your first 28, hopefully I got that right. I was trying to do math, years of life. What has been like the most challenging period of your life, and how did you ultimately kind of navigate through that?
I feel like this is very dark, but full transparency, 2018 to 2023 were very difficult years. In 2018, I lost a close friend to suicide, and I myself was really struggling with my mental health. So I started smoking a lot of weed, and I kind of went down the wrong path. I was bartending in college, and I definitely dabbled in things that I shouldn't have, and I got lost in that. And so I actually didn't cope. So from 2018, nobody knew. Like, people in college had no idea. They just thought I was this fun girl that was a bartender and drank and smoked, but it was way deeper than that. And so my mom is a therapist, and she got me a lot of help and support because I went to my parents and I said, I need to be put in an institution. Like, I need help. And they said, no, what you need is love. We don't think an institution is what's going to help you. So you're going to come home and we're going to get you all the help that you need. And so I did EMDR therapy for trauma here in America. And then I was working with practitioners abroad in Brazil as well, since my mom is well connected. And so to answer your question, I didn't deal with it well. My parents were my lifeline, and it took a long time to fight my addictions. I honestly, I had to work with a practitioner to wean off my SSRIs, so that was the first step, and then the next step was to stop taking anxiety medication, and that was a journey of probably a year, and I stopped using other substances, so I completely stopped drinking just by choice, and I stopped, using other drugs, and then I decided, okay, I'm gonna live a sober lifestyle, but weed was the thing I struggled with the most, I would say, actually. That was my biggest addiction, and people say you can't be addicted, but I totally think you can. That was my escapism, and I struggled to quit weed for about 7 years, and now I'm 3 years clean from weed. I'm sober, and that was the one thing I swore off for life because for me, weed was, like, my downfall, and it just kind of got worse, like, from 2018 to 2023, a lot of things happened, so I then broke my back in 2020, which was very difficult because I wasn't able to exercise. I was isolated because it was COVID. My mom got diagnosed with cancer, my uncle got diagnosed with cancer, and then we lost a good family friend to suicide, and so my mental health really just was not in a good place for 2018 to about 2022. 2023 was a roller coaster, but that was the year that I decided to go sober in 2023. That was the year that something snapped in me. I was in graduate school, I was working a full-time job, and I met this woman who just changed my life, and I really don't know how it happened. I'm not religious, but I think God just sent me her, to be honest.
You mentioned 2018 to 2023. 2023 is when things, like, well, that was the time period that you gave. So I guess what changed in 2023 where, like, why was that the end point? Was it getting sober? I think I always say 2022 was my, moment, because, I got help. I started going to therapy. I came out, and so like, it was pretty like there's a line in the sand of when I can really recognize where things started to shift in my life. So I'm just curious for you, like, what started to change that allowed you to kind of, I guess, really like start to heal and recover?
Absolutely. So I was in graduate school at the time and I was doing long distance with somebody. And I was actually visiting him and I was very unhappy and I couldn't understand why I was so unhappy. And so I had met this woman who was my acupuncture doctor and we built a relationship kind of outside of that. It kind of felt very like motherly daughter relationship. And I remember calling her kind of in a frantic, and I was just like, "I don't understand what's wrong. Like, I'm with my boyfriend. I'm doing all my non-negotiables. Like, I should be happy. What's wrong?" And she's like, "Well, there's clearly something there." And I hadn't told her that I was smoking weed because it was something I still had a lot of shame about. Like, I had spoken to her about my addictions. I was going to acupuncture because I was dealing with a lot of insomnia and migraines and just a lot of like dysregulation and physical symptoms. And I was riding this roller coaster, like, my PMDD was really bad, and so I was having these mood swings, and I was like, "I don't know what it is, but I think this relationship just, like, isn't in alignment for me." I just had these high levels of frustrations, and so we broke up. I flew back to where I was living at the time, which was Boston, and I just started working with her, and I told her, I said, "I'm really struggling with addiction to weed, and I'd like to stop because I think this is the reason I'm having all the problems that I'm having." Because I can pinpoint all of my health problems starting when I started smoking weed, and I abused it. I know everybody has their own relationship with weed. I'm not gonna say it's the enemy. I know that for me, it doesn't work. It's what caused me to feel anxiety, the depression, the paranoia. It also gave me insomnia. There's a list of things that weed did not that just made my life worse because of weed. And so when I told her that, she's like, "Are you actually serious about quitting weed?" And I said, "Yes." And I started doing something called head acupuncture, which is needles to your head. And that really helped me with my withdrawals. And I was actually living with three other girls at the time as I was in grad school, and they all smoked weed. And so that was a really difficult time. But I just completely like cold turkeyed it. I'm a very intense person, and I did start using nicotine again. So, they always say that an addict always just changes their addiction. And I was aware of it. And I was like, it's okay that I'm smoking vapes right now. And then after that, I gave up the vapes after I moved out and I was living on my own. And I was like, okay, now it's time to just like do me. And I got really into meditation. I just like went full swing to the other side and was like, how can I manage these symptoms without a substance? And that's where, I found breath work, which is really what helped me.
Uh, and I know we'll want to get into the hormone topic and get more educated on some of the science. Before that, I think, uh, in my experience, the concept of weed was presented to me or introduced to me as like something that's harmless. It's not a cigarette, it's not alcohol, it doesn't create DUI accidents, right? It's just this like very innocent, a stoner's never going to harm anybody, right? Um, and I think this is such an important topic because I still think that can tend to be the narrative, and I don't know what the mainstream narrative around it is, but I am curious, almost in like a devil in disguise perspective, like what was weed doing for you, and like why was weed the go-to. I don't want to answer it myself, but I am curious, like from your experience, like somebody hearing this, they're like, well, why wouldn't you just give it up, right? Like, what was it doing for you, and what are some of the misperceptions that you had to really learn the hard way that you would want to share verbally now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It was my escapism. I didn't know it at the time that I was avoiding trauma. I had a lot of unprocessed trauma from my younger years, and I didn't realize I had unprocessed trauma, right? I just wasn't aware of it. So it started out as this fun thing. Like I remember it was 420 in college and we were going to like a fraternity and everybody was smoking and I ended up smoking and I had a quiz the next day and I got a 6 out of 30. I flunked that quiz and I had never done
That's a
anything like
fat
that.
flunk. Yeah.
He literally fat flung. And I was like, what is going on? This isn't something I do. But then I was like in this mindset of like, oh, fuck it. Because I had never felt like rebellious or done anything quote unquote wrong. Like I was always such a good kid that followed the rules. And so I think this rebellious side came out and I was just like, I'm in college. Like I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want. And so I started abusing it because at first it started helping me with sleeping. But then and that's where I got lost, right? It just became this habit of like, oh, when I'm done with my day, I get to relax, and so I smoke weed. And then I started dating somebody that was in a frat, and then it's like widely accessible, and it's just something you do. I started working at a bar. It's like you're just around it all the time that it's normalized. And so there really was no thought process of how I was using it. I only know that it was escapism because now I get to look back, right? And hindsight's always 2020. But I was definitely avoiding the hard emotions. Like when I went to college, I was going through a really tough breakup with my first love, and I was really anxious because I didn't know anybody. The school was so big and the school like the actual studies were so hard and I just didn't know how to deal with it. And so I was like, I'm just going to smoke because when I smoke, all these thoughts stop and I can just like hang out and have quote unquote a good time. And that's what it always was. I associated weed with a good time. And then I remember junior year, so I think this is 2017, 2018. Um, I would smoke and I wouldn't be able to sleep. And so I would smoke even more and I started doing like dab carts and I always just had it on me. Like I always just had to be high all the time. I couldn't not be high. I just thought it wasn't fun. And so it just escalated so quickly and I never even saw a problem with it because everyone around me was essentially doing the same thing.
So one last one on weed, and then we can move on. Did you ever get to a point where you were like, okay, I have a really unhealthy relationship with weed, cut it off, and then was there ever a time where you were like, you know what? I think now I have stronger boundaries, I have stronger willpower. What I could have a healthy relationship with weed because there are still parts of it that maybe I would enjoy getting back to. Did you ever have experiences like that where you maybe tricked yourself into thinking that there is such a world in which you could have a healthy relationship, a non-addictive one, to something like weed?
Yes. Literally from 2016 to 2020, that's what I thought it was. And then in 2021, when I was in college or in graduate school, that's when I realized like every time I smoke, so this is what started to happen. So I would smoke and I would wake up and the next day I felt so unwell. Like I would always have a headache and I just kind of felt like I had this fog. I couldn't think, I wasn't productive. Like I'm not a productive person on weed. I just become a potato. And so I was just kind of like, what am I doing? Like I'm in graduate school. I can't afford to do this, but I couldn't help myself. So I would wake up and I would literally like when I was high, I would write, tomorrow night I will not smoke weed. And then tomorrow night would come and I couldn't not every time I did. So I didn't want to, and I still did it. That was it. So 2021, after 5 years, was when I realized, oh, I have a problem because I don't feel good when I do this and I still need it. So 5 years before that, I was convincing myself, I totally got this. It's not a problem. It's healthy, especially 2020. I was like, yeah, I have a great relationship with weed. Everybody knew me as a stoner and like the cool girl. And it's just like, no, I just had a problem and didn't know it.
I've done that recently where the night before I'll set a reminder in the morning and I'm saying, Matt, no, you're gonna fast today. That's been my thing. I've been wanting to like, I like to do fasts and really like for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's good. Just, it just feels good, and two, I really do think it like helps me connect with myself. Like I didn't really recognize like the spiritual the side of fasting until recently. I'm like, oh no, I feel good. Anyways, but I also love food, so I'll be like put the night before. All right, Matt, you're gonna fast today. It's not that hard. You've done it before, and I'll put it and I'll set it for like 8 a.m. the next day, and then I get to 8 a.m. I just came off a workout. I'm like, oh man, but I really want to eat my meal, and so I'll swipe delete the reminder. But I've done it. But I found what helps for anyone else. Find someone to fast with. It really helps with accountability. But anyways, so
That
you
first
mentioned.
that first stomach grumble hits different. It just that's
It does,
that's like
but
the hardest part.
then you get to a period where, like, you
Yeah.
start to, like you don't even think about it. You just kind of, you're good. Like, I don't even feel hungry anymore. Then I'm like clear, which is nice. So, anyways, we've really talked a lot about, I feel like, 2018 to 2023. So, like, who is Marina in 2024, 2025, 2026? Like, who are you becoming? You mentioned you explored and start to like understand different parts and sides of yourself. Like, what has that journey been like?
Yeah, absolutely. So my 26th birthday, I had like that quarter life crisis of like, what am I doing? I'm so unhappy. Nothing's going to change if nothing changes. And so I'm really proud of that girl who had the guts to honestly quit her job without a plan B. I will be the first to say that I'm not going to recommend everybody do that. I think it's really smart to have a plan, and to, financially be set. I just was able to figure it out. And I honestly never thought I was the person who could do that. I just had a lot of self-limiting beliefs, and obviously I'm still working through that. But I would say it was somebody who decided to have curiosity and finally listen to my gut. I've always had a very strong gut feeling and I've always ignored it. And so I just got to the point that I was like, I don't really believe in self-sabotage. I think it's a loop that we keep alive. And so I was like, at this point, I'm keeping this alive. And if I keep struggling with my mental health, it's my choice, it's my actions. And so something's got to change. And I really just, people might think it was a drastic decision, but it wasn't. It was so many years in the making. And it was just finally enough. So I went on a 2-week trip down to Peru with a friend. And I was like, this is crazy. And he had lived in Southeast Asia for 8 months or a year. And he gave me all these recommendations. And he was like, you could totally do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for 2 months in vacation and just like meet people because I felt so disconnected from everyone around me. I kind of felt like the black sheep. I was like, how does nobody see what's in front of them? I was like, I need to connect with people who are like minded. And when people are traveling, they're so open. And I never thought I was an open person because I struggled a lot with safety. I think people think they have a confidence problem. I tend to think it's a safety thing, especially a lot of women. If you have trauma and unprocessed trauma, you don't feel safe being yourself. And so to take action or like to go across the world and travel, like that's pretty scary. And I had been working out and taking some self defense classes. And so I was like, you know what? If somebody were to come at me, like, I can take them. I need to take on this attitude of, like, I've got me. And it was just a switch. I can't, identify what made that switch happen. I think I just had had enough. And so when I went traveling, I discovered who I am. And I was like, oh, I love to have a good time. I'm really funny. I'm witty. I'm silly. And it was just kind of all the parts that I had cut off because of corporate world and life being so serious finally came back alive. And it was just like, I love to connect with people and I have a very big heart. And I finally felt so seen connecting with these other people because when others are traveling, they're just so open to that connection. And so it honestly revived me of like, this is the point of life. It's connection. It doesn't matter, how much money I'm making because I had everything. I achieved my dream. I got the dream job. I had the master's. I had the car. I had the apartment. And I was so empty. And so when I was traveling, I just went with a 40 liter, nothing else. And I just felt so free. It made me realize I don't need anything else. I just need me and I can do this. Like you can just figure it out and you meet people along the way that help you. And it taught me the lesson of surrendering. I've always had a hard time with that because I like control. I'm very logical. And so it was, oh, this is what happens to life when you trust. And so it kind of also opened me back up to like having a relationship with God and like praying and gratitude. So it was a whole different side that I had neglected for a long time.
So on that point, oh, go ahead, MD. I saw you off mute. I was waiting for it.
Uh,
I had an intuitive feeling you had a question, but you didn't come off mute, so I was gonna run with it.
well, you said on that point, so I feel like you're more real. Go for
Go
it.
ahead.
You,
No, no, you got it.
me.
Yeah.
I don't know what my. I guess I'm coming up with the question as I say it because I keep hearing phrases like I found out like I got me like I can look after myself. I feel connected to who I am, and I guess like how have you been able to articulate, and I love the part where you're like I'm logical, so great, deep thinker alike, right? I want to hear more about how you have started to define or evolve the definition of your identity. Like what have you found out in terms of like who you would say you are. And then I have like a kind of a follow-up to that, but I'm just so curious to better understand like what that's done for your sake of self-identification, to be able to go and say like, I got me and I can take care of myself and things are going to be okay and I can surrender, right? Like, well, where does that put you in terms of like how you would logically define that?
Very good question. So, to be completely honest, I'm still working on defining who I am. I do believe that identity statements are what drive and create our lives. And so, I adopted the identity statement of I am someone who follows through on my word because I'm fascinated with, neuroplasticity and learning how we can reprogram our subconscious mind. And I have learned a lot about the story we tell ourselves are what rule our lives. And so, I know the importance of following through on your word because the second you don't, you create mistrust within self. And so I was somebody that used to say I was going to do things and then I never did. And I started to be like, okay, confidence isn't about looks. It's actually like, how can I prove to myself I have my own back? And I was like, oh, if I say I'm going to do something, I just do it. And so I adopted the identity of I am someone who follows through on her word. And that is still my identity statement because my word is my bond, and I truly believe, like, the amount of power that words hold create our reality, and so that has really helped me in becoming sure of myself because it's like, do I know what I'm doing? No, I don't, but I trust the author of the book because I know I've always figured it out, and I didn't have that confidence before. It was more so about becoming like, if I say I'm gonna do something, I do it, and people don't realize how important that part is. Um, does that answer both of your questions? I kind of forgot your second
I
question.
love no, that was the question. I didn't ask a follow-up. I think what I heard was your it's identity through action.
Yes.
Which is aligned to a statement, whether you say it out loud, write it down, say it intrinsically, whatever that might be. And that is, I mean, if you just, I think if you follow a lot of these personal development influencers out there, you know, you could rattle off some names. I think they all, not all of them, I can't speak for all of them, but there is this theme of stay connected and committed to what you say you're going to do. Like, you can't lie to yourself. You can't, essentially betray yourself. And gosh, I wonder how potent that really is. It's hard, you can't really quantify it, but it does seem like that's an easy overlook for so many people. Is that your experience when you coach folks, when you work with people and their development? Do you tend to start there? Is that like foundational? Is it let's come up with a statement and let's see if we can stick to it the next morning, or like how does that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do believe it's foundational. I think it's people overcomplicate things. You can tell how successful somebody is going to be by how easily they can simplify things. I think it's as simple as like, what are 2 to 3 non-negotiables that you can achieve every single day without fail? And most people don't understand the importance of establishing a floor cadence. So it's like, no matter what's going on in my life, what are 2 to 3 things that I will do for myself no matter what? And that can mean 3 meals a day or waking up and making my bed, because you need to start with that floor cadence to say, okay, I know I can confidently show up for myself. And once you have that floor, then you can start adding things. So, like when I coach people, that is what I start with. Is like, let's meet you where you're at, right? Because people tend to jump. And there's nothing wrong with having those aspirations, but when it's too big, your subconscious programming and limiting beliefs will find a way to not make it work because that's the story you have of life. It's like, I can't make anything work. So we need something that's more tangible. So it's like, what is the thing that I know without a doubt I can achieve? Because we need to start creating mini successes because that creates repetition, which creates confidence, right? And you need proof of confidence. And so it's just like really meeting people where they're at and saying, what are things we can do? And then just start adding things on top.
I love the identity conversation. Probably a bigger conversation, but I feel like I've really just taken up that I'm a child of God, and that is like the most humbling, but also like gives me so much direction because it's like, yeah, like that's me. And like I'm love, and therefore I am love. If I'm a child of God, I am love, and so my north star is truth and love. Like, which again, maybe oversimplified, but with it's a feeling that we all know if we really and so like it's actually very clear on where to go. It might not be linear, and it might be uncomfortable. Actually, it will be uncomfortable because fear keeps us safe. Love is actually incredibly, vulnerable. And anyways, I love the identity conversation. But that said, you had mentioned actually, actually one of your posts that I actually really appreciated was around trying new things and putting yourself in or doing things that you wouldn't normally do, or that maybe didn't align like with what you thought you would. And one of those being going to Bible study, even though you're not Christian. Like, I'm just curious what prompted you to do that over, not just the Bible study, but just more broadly, like what prompted you to take on this activity, and like what have you learned through the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So quitting my job taught me that every time I do things that make me uncomfortable, I level up. And so I think Carl Jung used to say, like, where your fear is, there your task is. And I used to be very scared of things. And so now I've taken the identity of like, I'm in control. So when I see a fire, I want to go straight into it. Or if there's any area of my life in which I feel resistance, I'm like, I want to go into it because I want to explore all sides of my being. And even things that I don't agree with, I think it's really important to get to understand why somebody might believe that. And I think a lot of people are lacking that, right? I have a lot of curiosity. It's something that I actually believe I taught myself. Like, it's a little bit by nature, but in being like, why? Like, I self reflect a lot. And in that, I've developed curiosity of like, wait, why is that resistance there? Why do people believe this? And to be honest, like, in terms of the Bible study and doing things that make me uncomfortable, I just am in a place where I am discovering who I am, and what better way to discover who I am, what my values are, what I'd like to do than trying things I've never tried before. People think that you just are born knowing, and some are blessed with that. I would argue most aren't. And people say, follow your passions. Well, what if you don't know what you're passionate about? Follow curiosity or something that doesn't make sense to you, or something you have resistance, because it's like, why do you have that resistance? I want to understand why I have that resistance. If so many people are happy learning about this, excuse me, I want to know about it too, like let me in on that type of vibe. And so I just adopted this person, like this identity of like, I do hard things and I do things that I think I can't, because I want to prove to myself that the only person stopping me and limiting me is me. And that just really comes from like, I believe that we came on this earth to do what we were meant to do. And like, my dreams are my dreams for a reason. And it's like, I need to start following that curiosity if I'm here to serve other people, which is what I believe I'm here to do, right? Create an impact. And I can't do that if I don't know myself and don't explore these things that I might have resistance to. I think it's important to open our minds and be critical thinkers. And that means doing things that make you uncomfortable and maybe you don't agree with at first.
Man, the uh the resistance, it comes through so like clearly around religion. So we're gonna get into it. I want
For
to
you?
understand
Are you saying
what
for you, or just like, I'm curious? I was
resistance.
curious when you talk about resistance. I feel like you were like there was something that came up for you, and I was curious like what
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, for me, I mean, I could speak to my own piece. Thanks for asking about me. But I was more so pointing out. Marina was quick to say, I can't remember like how far ago it was in this conversation. Very quick to say, I'm not religious. But was also, and I don't mean to like call you out by any means. This is not. I'm just sharing the observation of the conversation, which was I heard I'm not religious, and then I heard I'm starting to I'm starting to meditate, I'm starting to connect or reconnect, and I'm curious about that with God. Um, I'm going to a Bible study as of all the things you could do, right, that are maybe uncomfortable, you've chosen to go to a Bible study. You said the word resistance, right? You also said you're from a Brazilian family, I would imagine Catholic.
Yes.
Right. So I just want to understand like your um relationship journey with, and maybe these are two separate words, religion and God, right? But like I want to better understand just from a faith perspective, like what has that relationship journey, how has that started, where like how has that evolved? Where are you at today?
Yeah. No, I love talking about this. I was talking about this with a friend last night. So I grew up Catholic, and when we moved to America in Michigan, it was a very small white conservative town, and people were very religious, and everything was about right, wrong, good, bad, which I'm like, that's literally not what religion is. And so I really shied away from it. We didn't speak English, and so going to church was very confusing. We were like, what's going on? And everybody that I knew in my hometown that was religious was very judgmental. And it kind of really just pushed me the exact opposite way. I was like, oh, I don't want to be religious. Like, if this is how you guys are, like, you guys aren't good people. And so I actually just stopped going to church and didn't really have a relationship until so for about 10 years, I really didn't think much about God. Like, I would pray at night, and so you could say I had a relationship with God. I don't really remember much. I would go to like, I had these missions that we'd go to in the summer that were religious, but I never really thought I was religious. And then when I was in college, I was very like, I'm not religious, like that rebellious side of me. And but I would always pray. So I think I've always believed in something higher, like a higher power. I've never been an atheist. And more recently, the reason I, started doing Bible study is because I have a friend and she was talking to me about this sermon and I was like, "Oh, I really like that." And I like the concept of like every week getting together with people and being reminded of like how blessed we are or a certain lesson. And I've always actually been jealous of how much faith religious people have. I was like, I wish I had that much faith. And so I was like, wait, anything I'm jealous of or about, I can just become and have. So why don't I just explore that? Like I can develop faith, It's because I always thought you can't force a belief. And so like what even is a belief? And I was like, well, I already pray to God. I always just called it the universe, whatever you want to call it. I believe in energy and quantum physics. And so I have proof of how blessed I've been and how protected I've been. And I was like, I don't really know what that is, but I know it's something bigger than me. And so I think I do have resistance, about religion still. And I actually was going to quit Bible study and I was talking with somebody who is religious and they were like, I think you should actually continue with it. And so I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, I feel like it's very forceful. And it's like this thing of like, if you don't follow God, or Jesus, then you'll be punished. But it's like, whoa, I don't really know if we need to be that black and white about it and that extreme. And so I'm really challenging this resistance because I want to learn more about myself and I want to hear other people's interpretations of it. And what I can say is, ever since I've started surrounding myself with people who are very rooted in their faith, not necessarily religious, but like have a very strong connection to God, my life has gotten so much better and my mental health and even my own life. So I pray every morning, I pray every night intentionally, like that is part of my non-negotiable. And my life has just completely switched, for the better in the past 3 months.
Quickly on that, because you asked, Matt, um, I would say, yeah, very eerily similar experience, journey, resistance element. And I think I come back to like baby in the bathwater, right? Like at some point when you stepped away from religion, maybe you felt at some point you threw the baby out with the bathwater. Literally, maybe baby Jesus, right? Like the analogy plays, I think, pretty well. I think I should not say what I think you're doing, but I think what I've done or what I've come to is like I'm trying to come back and connect to what actually serves me. And then I am still, I think, skeptical, resistant, hesitant with all that might come with it because it's not black and white. And I think that sometimes it does get polarizing. You're either a full-fledged like Catholic Christian or you are an atheist. And I don't think it's that. And I think there is absolutely an in-between there.
You don't have to be.
Um, huh?
That's say you don't have to be though. That's the thing is like I feel like we place these like we place
Right.
these
No,
it's like I
yeah. Yeah, no, and that's just there's no question. It's more just I think especially when you get into like the institutionalization of religion, right? Talk
Yes.
about a big topic, so we can pivot.
no
Matt, if you had
I
any
want to stay
other.
here for a little bit because
Okay, let's stay here. Yeah, I'm
I've
happy
got
to.
thoughts.
Cool.
I completely agree.
I just yeah, I mean, like I don't, people ask me what I am. It's like I don't really know. I don't have a I don't have a label, and I don't think I need one, and that's just what feels right for me right now. But I am faithful, and but like what I would say is like I feel like I made a post the other day about for there's this whole thing where surrounding Jaden Ivey, if you're like unfamiliar, Marina, he's a basketball player, he's kind of gone a little crazy, but he's like very, very outspokenly Christian, and he's kind of like I wouldn't say losing his mind a little bit, but I think he kind of is. It's like a manic episode. Anyways, he got released from the Chicago Bulls, and like um it was really outspoken against the LGBT community, calling them unrighteous and sinful and yada yada yada, and like it just I posted something around like I don't know, people like that, to me. And actually, I had someone like respond to my story, and I told this person sent me 17 messages of why being, identifying with the LGBT community is sinful, a bunch of videos you need to reconsider your gifts, everything. And I'm like, dog, this is not the way to do it. And I feel like so many people, when it comes to, even if it's like trying to bring people closer to God, do the exact opposite by forcing it upon people. And to me, what I've found through my own personal experience with myself and of those around me is like the best way to bring someone closer to whatever it is that you believe in is by inspiring them through your actions. Like being, in this case, so joyful that someone's like, "Man, like, what do like, what do you believe in? Like, how are you so, like, happy?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm just, a follower of Jesus," that kind of thing. It's like, "Oh, really? Well, maybe I should, like, look into that," It's like we had someone on our podcast, I've told the story a few times. She was a porn star for 7 years and, found her, found Jesus and completely changed her life, got sober, was, a drug addict, and, she was so joyful on this call, so grounded, so centered, like, so poised, so loving, so warm, and she was obviously outspoken. She's got her own ministry now. She's a pastor, and so that, like, just being around her, like, kind of like inspired me to start to like open up the Bible, or like, I'm like, "Wait, maybe I got something to learn here." And so I think my point being is like I feel like so many people try to change someone's belief systems by pushing it upon them when all that does is push people farther away. And someone asked me this question, so I'll ask you guys recently, like, I guess maybe it's not as well, maybe it's applicable, but I'll just say, like, I guess in this case, could you date an atheist? I'll tell you my response, but like, could you date an atheist? That's my question.
No.
Your answer is no. What about you, MD?
Date?
That's what I
Like the
said.
question's date? Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah. Why am I asking a question I know the answer to, right? Yeah, but I mean, yes, and I can elaborate why, but we would work on that, and not work on it from a like you have to see it my way, but like work on it as like I'm gonna dig into it. We're gonna ask questions. Like I want to understand how you arrived here. Like I think we're hearing right now that there are seasons of people's lives where they're disconnected from God, and so in that regard, I see it as like if anyone like myself who has been disconnected at one point can reconnect, well then there's potential there. Now, you know, I think how convicted they are and maybe how set they are with that will tell me more about how maybe not open-minded they are, or maybe how not malleable they are to changing who they are. Like, I think those are the red flags that are underlying the atheism itself. And so
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to be like, no, and just write everybody off in the moment that they're in.
Yeah, but you're ultimately meeting
So
people in the moment that they're in if you're gonna date them.
yeah, no, I for sure. I would say that
I
that's
mean, I
not.
mean,
I mean,
unless you're going in and it's like, all right, like, this has to change, but like, I'll meet you where you're at, but we're gonna work. Yeah,
well,
we're gonna work on this thing over here.
yeah, maybe working on it was the wrong way to put it. I saw the facial reactions to that. I look, I come back to, and I don't want to answer the question with another question, but like, are they spiritual? Like, do they, what we get from our relationship from God, are they getting that from something else, somewhere else? Or can they do that? Do we believe that they can do that? I don't know.
Sure. So here's my answer. Okay, maybe this, because they were so I told him I told the guy I'm very faithful. I'm very like God is is it a big part of my life? And in some ways, I pray similar to you, Marina, and read my little daily devotional and, things like that. Um, but my answer was like, and maybe this will change, but like right now when I think about it, I'm like, I don't really care necessarily what they believe in so much so as like their actions. Like if you're kind, if you're warm-hearted, if you're patient, if you're loving and compassionate, I don't really care how you get there personally, so long as like that's how you show up. Because to me, like faith, religion is a roadmap. It's one way to become the person that you want to become love, to be loving, to be compassionate, to be warm, kind, and like for a lot of people, I think that can be Christianity, whatever it is for you, finding God or whatever it might be. But if that's for you, just being, I'm a believer in the universe or even atheist. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how you get there. But like, if you show up as warm, those qualities, I don't really care what you believe in. So much so that you aren't going to be judging me if you see me opening the Bible or doing my morning meditation. So much so there's no judgment for what I'm doing and my practices. Like, I don't really care how you get there. So I'm curious for your guys' reaction, and maybe that'll change. But like, because like there are parts of Buddhism that I'm like, that makes total sense. Like I appreciate that. I can take that in my life and like make use of it. So I try not to like attach myself to one or the other, but curious for your guys' thoughts.
Marina, you were a hard no. Let's give you an opportunity here to.
Yeah, well, Mike, I think you brought up a good point of like, if they're atheists, does that mean they're spiritual? I just personally, I don't think I'd be able to connect with someone who doesn't believe in something greater. I don't care what it is. I just,
Mm.
I'm thinking more so of my children and how you instill faith because I don't know. I've just, even when I was disconnected from God, I still thought there was a higher power, whether that be the universe. Like I knew that there was something greater. And so I just, like, I've never connected with someone who honestly didn't believe that. Like, I don't know any atheists. Most people that I know are spiritual or religious. And so maybe that's why I'm saying no, is because I've never been able to have that connection with an atheist. But I do think for me, it's important to believe in something greater because I want my children to have that.
You bring in children
Oh,
now that definitely broadens the like it gave me some. I'm thinking in my head now. Sorry, go ahead, me.
well, no, because now Matt, like you, I feel like you said something similar to me overall. But you were like, if they're kind, if they show up with love, if they're, if we are compatible at like an energy wavelength, spiritual level. But do you not care like what that might be rooted in? Like what is driving that? Because if you don't
Not
agree with
really.
the soil and the roots, like do you fear that maybe that could fall apart? Like what is that connected to? Where does that come from? And the source of where that comes from, could that erode? Could that deteriorate? Could that fall apart? And
Yeah, I
like
could, but I
Marina,
feel, but I
when
but I
I
feel
hear
like
how Marina thinks about it, just quickly, is like when I hear how Marina thinks about it, it's like I know it's connected to something greater. Versus, I think I'm just wondering, like, what would that be connected in if not something greater? And would you be concerned about that piece of it?
Yeah, but I think you can make the same case with faith and Christianity. Like people move in and out of faith too. Like there are times in my life where I feel very connected to God, and I'm like, this makes like, wow, makes all the sense. And then there's other times where I think people like fall away from it. That root. Yeah, theoretically, it should be pretty firm and strong, but like I think we're all human beings and susceptible to losing faith and things of that nature, wondering, you go through it's like, why this? Like, God, you're supposed to be with me, you're not, like, and people might move away from it. So yeah, I hear you, but I think like, and I would say I think the argument could be made with faith as well. So again, like to me, I'm very much concerned about the actions, the way they treat me, the way they treat other people, service workers. Like that gives me such a good understanding of like who you are. So rather than like what you tell me you believe in. But Marina makes a good point when you talk about children because it's like how do you again, I think like how do you instill that on your children? Then it's like I think, like having something that you're aligned with becomes more important. I think still obviously children follow like what they see, and so your actions ultimately I think do hold the most importance. But I think like instilling that at a young age, I see Marina's point too.
Full circle back to what Marina said, which is your identities through your actions. So, like, I think that's, in less words, maybe what we're getting at. Um, I want to just quickly get back to uh the like I'm sorry, the people that are of like a religious identity versus, I would say, us three. We do seem to be in like a very similar wagon here, which is I'm connected to parts of this thing, and I know I'm very clear on what I'm connected to, and I'm very clear on what I don't care to keep with it. And I'm wondering if you think that some people, especially the ones who are judgmental, the ones that appear to be of religious faith, the ones that send Matt 17 messages with gifts, like the ones that are
No, it might
very
have been
maybe
more. You should see this. It was wild. I got to show you guys after.
yeah, but the
I'm not
ones
even
that
gonna.
are like defensive about it, quick to judge. I wonder if like because we've had such a great conversation about Marina's like identity evolution and her journey of how sure she's become of herself, right? Like, and I just wonder if those people are just not there. Like they're just at a different place in their own journey as in themselves. And so is religion more of a crutch for them versus for us, it's something different? And does that give them a sense of belonging? I'm very critical of when people have pride and very critical of when people have a sense of like pack mentality. Like, you know, I'm on this team, I wear this jersey. And I'm like, okay, but can you not? Can you go off on and be on your own and go tackle Thailand for 2.5 months, right? Like, can you do that thing? And I just don't know that many people are at that place. We know for a fact that many people are not at that place. And so I wonder if that's the very subtle discrepancy between where we're at with how we connect to our higher power or our greater purpose versus where some people are at with their religious journey.
What do you
Yeah,
think,
I
Marina?
would I think so. I think that there are different levels of consciousness. I think some people were put on this earth to not evolve and remind ourselves, like to be obedient and to choose inconvenience and still love regardless of how they operate. And that's not coming from like a superiority place. It's just like there are different levels of consciousness. And I think a lot of people who use like religion has been weaponized and it's definitely political now. And so that's, where there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of like right and wrong, good and bad and shame. And it's like that's actually literally the opposite of religion. And so I think the people who are like that use religion and very strict in their ways, I think they just like control. I don't actually think that they embody the values of what true religion and true religion is of like the love, the kindness, the acceptance, the service. And so I think it comes down to like they don't have an identity. And so that is their identity. They make it their identity. And it's like, that's so boring. You literally don't know who you are. And so you take an institution and you literally don't have any discernment or critical thinking. And you say, I'm just going to adopt this. But it's like, you don't have the level of consciousness to have discernment. And even when somebody is giving advice, it's like, does this apply to me? What are the intentions? There's just no self reflection and awareness. And I don't want to say no and like speak for everyone, but I think we're kind of talking about people that are more radical with it. And so that's where I kind of honestly see it as brainwashing.
There's
It's
also,
radical. I think it's egotistical. I think it's defensive. It's insecure. It's all the things. But yeah, Matt, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and let me be very clear. I think there's a lot of people there's a lot of there's a lot of really good Christians too. I don't want to make
Mhm.
this like, anti-religion and complete because I know a lot of very connected, warm-hearted, loving, um, Jesus following Christians. So, but yeah, again, I think we can agree it all comes back to like how you show up in the world. And so anyways, Marina Haddad, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.